Hi, I'm Jeff Van Gundy, and you're listening to Thunderbus.
Bones and Watson in the morning.
And we're back with the beginning of the show.
Yeah, that's right. The very start of the show.
Bones is the other co-host.
Yeah, that's me, Bones, and Watson is on the mic as well.
And I'm the other co-host, Watson.
And welcome to Thunderbus.
You know, it's been weird. We haven't done like a traditional episode in quite a while.
It's been a while.
Since we could look at each other straight.
It's been a while since we got to talking.
Well, now this episode is stained by by early 2000s butt rock.
yeah, that's right. And a little late 2000s comedy reference at the beginning.
Which means that we are back to form. We've done lots of interview shows, been stepping outside the box a little bit for us, and it's been a lot of fun, but we're going to have a nice classic Rick and Morty adventure for you today.
Yeah, that's right. You know, Lon really couldn't keep up with all the pop culture references. We were spitting at him, so...
Very nice guy, Lon Kruger.
Yes, thank you,
Extremely
Lon.
nice guy.
Yeah, great guy. Really good guy.
By the way, if you're someone who heard the Lon Kruger episode and this is your first non-Lon Kruger Thunderbus episode, welcome. Glad to have you on the bus.
Yep, welcome to the bus, man.
No tickets required.
Or if you're a big Joey Crawford fan, then yeah, welcome to our regular show.
You know, I saw someone on Reddit commented on our Joey Crawford episode, and they're like, that guy had the thickest Philly accent ever. I need bleach for my ears. And I was like, come on. That was a cool accent.
Yeah, it was classic. It was like it was like a perfect NBA ref accent. That should be a requirement. Every NBA ref has to be from Philadelphia.
That's probably why players have such a hard time getting along with them.
That's why the refs boo the players sometimes.
I wonder what kind of person is just so anti-Philadelphia that they like hate the accent. Is it just people from Delaware?
I think it's just Philly people themselves.
Oh, because they're self-hating?
Yeah, they just, yeah. The city of brotherly hatred, of self-hatred.
So here's my theory about Philadelphia. It's huge. It's one of the 10 biggest cities in America, but people don't really talk about it, don't really care about it that much. It's just like an old East Coast city, not a ton of personality. It's got like some history stuff going on.
Yep.
I feel like they really missed their shot when they didn't stay the United States capital.
Yeah, that was their prime. Ever since then, it's kind of been downhill. I think they thought the Bell would be a big tourist attraction and bring a lot of people in. I mean, bells are bells, baby.
Yeah, they failed to ask for whom the bell tolls. And whether you think that's a Metallica reference or an Ernest Hemingway reference. Hemingway? No, George Orwell.
Oh.
Oh.
There you go.
I guess I just added which of the two people I am. Whichever the two people you think that's a reference to kind of says something about who you are as a person.
Yeah, no, that's true. I mean, we all got a little insight on Watson as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
A whole canvas of culture.
Bet you didn't know this about Metallica. The drummer, Lars Ulrich, is a native of Denmark, and he's actually a knight in Denmark.
Sir Lars?
Sir Lars Ulrich. He was knighted for being a really good drummer.
How exactly did Charles Barkley get knighted? That's something I've never really asked myself to research.
Oh, Charles Barkley is a proper English gentleman.
Oh, okay.
He goes hunting with the hounds. He wears one of those
Bow wow.
One of those tall hats, and he's got like the coattails.
Yeah, you know what? Now all of that wardrobe makes sense.
He walks around with the Great Dane.
So that's how he got knighted.
Drinks
because
tea.
he all of his idiosyncrasies fit that of someone who is knighted.
Yeah. Charles Barkley is more English than the Queen.
Well, Okay. Well, that answers my question. I appreciate that. But speaking
Speaking
of questions,
of questions,
we got a big questions episode today.
There
It's
it
today.
is. There it is. Let's move out of riffing mode and into agenda mode.
Well, I mean, the episode is we asked all of our friends, every single one of them, that don't watch basketball and don't really have much interest in the sport, or just haven't been avid basketball watchers like ourselves in the past few years. We asked them to ask just basic basketball questions.
Stuff that that it wouldn't occur to a basketball fan to ask, to even question.
Yeah.
You know, like there's the story about like two fish in the ocean, and one says, "Hey, how's the water?" and the other one says, "What's water?" You know, you don't see what's around you all the time.
Right.
So we kind of hoped that these questions would be funny, of course, but also make the familiar unfamiliar.
And let me be clear by saying that, we're going to have answers to all of these questions, and all of these answers are right.
Yes, guaranteed 100%.
So I just want to get that out of the way.
Correct answers.
If you have any issue with the validity, the accuracy of these answers, you are the wrong one.
By the way, we de-identified all these questions. We don't know who asked them. So we feel like that gives us license to make fun of the people who asked them in absentia.
Yes, yeah.
Or not make fun of the people. Laugh at the questions. Because some of these questions are pretty funny if you're not a basketball fan.
Yeah, for
or
sure.
If you are a basketball
We're
fan.
not going to make fun of you if you asked a stupid question. We're not going to make fun of you on the mic if your question is very stupid. So just don't worry if you ask a question that is really, really stupid.
Really, extremely fucking stupid.
Yeah.
But before we hop into the main course of this podcast meal, I got an appetizer to bring out, Bones.
I can smell it from here.
Yeah, it smells good because it's the wafting rumors of the NBA's potential return.
Oh, the old Woj bomb.
The old wafting Woj bomb. The word waft is amazing. Really underutilized word.
Mm-hmm.
The word waft is the Lugens Dort of the English language.
Well, the act itself is it's kind of funny, It's like, I don't have to explain it, but yes, wafting, it's underrated.
Basically because when you hear waft, probably 35% of the time, it makes you think of fart.
Yeah, and then it also implies that someone has farted and is deciding that this smell needs to be, spread.
But the rumors of the NBA returning, things are starting to look kind of positive. There was reporting that the Players Association was pulling NBA players to see if they
CP3.
wanted to return. Kind of sounds like there's development along the ideas of bringing the league back after at least a 3-week training camp, possibly in 2 different locations. Like 2 different bubbles.
Yeah.
So it sounds to me like the most likely scenario is sometime in June, they'll probably come to some kind of a determination. I bet we're just going to go straight to the playoffs after the training camp. It's not like the first thing they're going to do basketball-wise is play games in the playoffs because the players would not
Right.
be down for that. They got to have some kind of a phase-in period. But the lottery teams are not going to want to come back.
No.
I don't see any way that we play more regular season games. I could see maybe a training camp and then some exhibition games
Yeah.
between the playoff participants that don't count for the playoffs, just to get people ramped up, which would be really cool. It'd be like the most intense exhibition games ever.
Yeah, it would be dope. I was thinking, so I heard that the Players Association sent out a text to all of the players asking, do you want this season to resume? And they just respond yes or no, and it's supposed to be anonymous. But you wonder if the teams who are going to the playoffs, you would assume all of them would say yes. But teams who have like no dog in the race, are they saying no? Like what are we going to see with that outcome?
Well, I mean, Steve Kerr already said that the Warriors' season is over.
Oh, it's so over.
The Warriors are checked out.
Let me tell you. Gotta love it.
But and then there was this deal where there was a call with some of the NBA bigwigs like LeBron, Kawhi, and Chris Paul. And Chris Paul's the one who organized it, and basically like creating a power block of guys saying, we want to finish the season.
Yeah.
Let's get it done. And, if you get LeBron and Chris Paul, let alone the other guys, if you get those two guys pointed in the same direction, they have a lot of sway within the players' family,
Mm-hmm.
So I feel pretty confident that we are going to have some playoffs and a 2020 champion.
A pandemic posse.
Pandemic posse.
Hey, let me ask you this. Assuming they do resume and there are not fans in the arena, will this switch up the camera angles significantly or at all?
Well, yeah, I think it'll be different because there won't be fans. And if there's no fans, you don't need to play in these big-ass arenas,
No.
right? So it's probably going to look more like a summer league situation where they're playing in a smaller facility that doesn't have many, if any, stands. And in those arenas, they have the camera stations that are several rows up. They're elevated and they're pretty far back.
Right.
I don't think that those camera positions will be like relative to the court will be inside the room of whatever facility they're playing in. I could be wrong,
Yeah.
but
That's a good point. I mean, it's it'll be relative to the size of the space and the layout of the arena or the court. But yeah, I don't know. It could be interesting. We could get some experimenting and finally see some GoPros on players.
that would be dope.
Yeah, that'd be really cool.
What they just like wore GoPros like strapped across their foreheads,
Yeah, just give me like a GoPro,
like a headlamp or something.
Yeah, of course, on all of them, and then you could like tune in to like whichever channel, like whichever player channel you want to. The old Robin Lopez cam.
It's just staring death beams at whatever mascot there is, because there has to be a mascot.
Mm-hmm.
Mascots indispensable personnel.
Yep, essential.
Plus, you don't have to give them COVID tests because they're not humans.
That's a good point. They can't get it. Wow. Maybe the mascots should just finish out the season in a basketball match.
Yeah, like a one-on-one tournament of mascots.
Yeah, and then if your mascot wins, then that team wins. Which, by the
I'm trying
way,
to think what mascot would have an advantage here. The Suns mascot is a gorilla. Gorillas are really strong.
I
also,
will
what the fuck?
I don't
What does a gorilla
understand
have
it.
to do with the center of the solar system?
I don't get it. I don't get Phoenix as a whole. Their whole thing. What are you even doing? But I'll say this: Rumble would give other mascots a run for their money because he's actually pretty athletic. And I'm not just biased, but I do know that he can do backflips.
And he can make half-court shots standing backwards.
Oh yeah,
That's a key advantage. It's an unguardable shot.
yeah. Man, it would be ideal if it was mascot horse. Not horse. Like pig, but 5 letters. Horse.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a game. It's like a basketball game. H-O.
So sounds like
S.
sounds like the season's probably
Yeah.
coming back, which is exciting because that means we get to watch this Thunder team again. There is one other very important piece
Yep.
of NBA news
Let's hear it.
that I got for you, Bones.
Okay, this is news to me because I don't know what you're about to say.
This happened this month.
I'm so nervous.
So our good old friend
Joey Crawford?
Ron Artest.
Okay.
He changed his name.
Panda's friend. He changed his name again, I think, a few days ago.
Yes, that is the news.
Okay.
So
I think I saw this.
So he changed his name from Ron Artest to Meta World Peace, of course.
Mm-hmm.
On May 4th, so less than 2 weeks ago, Ron Artest changed his name again, and now his name is Meta Standiford Artest.
Aww.
Because his wife, her name is Maya Standiford. So
he changed his name to his wife's last name?
He changed his name to a hyphenated his wife's last name and his old last name.
Interesting.
His first last name, if you will.
Repeat his new name again.
Meta Standiford Artest.
Okay. Yeah, I'll say this. It's not as fun as Meta World Peace, not as driven as Meta World Peace. Panda's Friend, you could argue, is as good as this one. But good for Ron Artest. I mean, at the very least, it sounds like he's in love.
Was his name ever officially Panda's Friend?
I thought so. I thought it was Panda's Friend for a little bit there. And I don't know. I don't remember him ever going back to Meta World Peace or Ron Artest. I don't know the timeline of name transitioning.
I got to say, he's kind of played out the changing his name thing. I don't even know what to call him anymore.
Well, yeah. I mean, I feel like I'm offending someone by calling him, something else. People are really offended about what you call people these days. So I just I just avoid calling them anything. I'll say that.
That's a good point, Dickwad.
Thank you.
You want to get into these questions?
Yeah, let's get it.
All right, question number 1. I happen to know that this question comes from someone who used to be a basketball coach.
Okay, so this is not it's not an ignorant question.
No,
that we're gonna really laugh at later.
No. This is an interesting question because I did not know the answer to this.
Okay,
I had to go look it up. So the question is, there are 2 lines that come out of the baseline that are outside of the lane. What are they? See if you can answer that. So what he's talking about, there are these little hash marks. I'd say maybe they're like a foot or 2 feet long that are just sticking out of the baseline, like parallel to the sidelines.
Right.
And I've wondered this before, but I never really looked it up. Do you know what this is?
Well, yeah, I do, because it's right here in front of me. But I didn't know previously. I had no idea.
So these define what is called the lower defensive box.
LDB.
The LDB. So the lower defensive box is defined by these hash lines, and then it goes up the court until the bottom of the semicircle below the free throw line. So there's the free throw line, and then there's the circle that goes around it. The bottom of the circle is the barrier of the lower defensive box.
Okay.
And what the lower defensive box is for is it defines an area where if an offensive player starts his drive inside the lower defensive box, the charge circle doesn't apply.
Oh.
So, normally if there's a defensive player in the charge circle and he takes contact from an offensive player,
right,
it's automatically a foul on the defender because he's inside the charge circle.
Exactly.
But if the offensive player begins his drive inside this zone, that's not the case.
Interesting. Well, there you go. I had no idea.
Me neither. Doesn't happen very often.
Lyndon D. Bonson. That's wild, though. How did you? Where did you find that? Was that on Wiki, or did you have to do some deep diving?
I found that it was the lower defensive box on Wikipedia, but Wikipedia didn't really explain a whole lot about what the lower defensive box meant. So I Googled lower defensive box, and then I found, I think it was on the NBA website, and it had an explanation, and it had a video clip,
Okay.
like a narrated video clip that explained what I just explained.
Okay. Well, let's move on to the next question here.
Yeah, that one was hilarious.
Is it true that the original name for basketball was shooty hoops? So I did some research, and as far as I'm concerned, it has always been basketball. Now, I was thinking why they might think this was ever shooty hoops, and I believe that they are confused with the cereal Fruit Loops. And so, no, it was never shooty hoops, as far as I'm concerned. And I think you're thinking of Fruit Loops.
Well, I think you're on the right track there because Fruit Loops actually sponsored their own sport that was basically basketball, but just different enough that that they couldn't have copyright claims.
Okay.
And they called it Fruity Loops Shooty Hoops.
Okay. Well, there you go. That makes sense why you'd even ask the question. Because I'll be honest, when I saw it, I was like, I mean, no. But that actually makes this person seem smarter.
Yeah, it's 100% totally legit. I have a regular Fruity Loops Shooty Hoops pickup game with my friends.
Oh, wow.
We eat Fruit Loops and then we play Shooty Hoops. A decent amount of time we puke because of the Fruit Loops. But that's okay because after the Shooty Hoops, we eat Fruit Loops again.
The old Fruity Loop Shooty Hoops puke.
What's really nice is if when you're playing Fruity Loop Shooty Hoops, if you can execute an alley-oop.
Yeah, that's like catching the golden snitch in Quidditch.
I open at the close. Spoiler alert.
Hey, yeah, whoa. Watch your spoilers.
Resurrection Stone!
Hey, you know the rules of this pod. We don't spoil nothing.
Question number 3. Why is Steph Curry considered good when he and I have the same amount of finals MVPs? Why, Bones?
So, Steph Curry has won 3 MVP titles. He's won 3 NBA titles, no finals MVP titles, even though he's got 2 regular season MVPs. He doesn't have the MVP for the best of 7 finals series. Now,
to clarify, Andre Iguodala won in 2015.
yes,
The award should have gone to LeBron James.
It should have gone to LeBron, which would have been the very first. It would have been the second because it was Bill Russell?
Jerry West.
Jerry West. It would have been the second time the loser got finals MVP. Now, but it should have happened.
Now, I should clarify that in Fruity Loops Shooty Hoops, the MVP
Alley-oop.
comes from the losing team by definition. But go on.
Yeah, but that's a whole different ballgame. We're talking about NBA.
Literally.
We're talking about hoops, otherwise known as basketball. And Steph Curry is one of the greatest. He's probably the greatest shooter of all time. He's going to go down as a top 25 player of all time, in my opinion.
Undoubtedly.
But I think that he got gypped on the first finals MVP. You know, it should have gone to LeBron because he was the best player in that series. But because of how things work out, we typically just don't give it to the loser. So, that being said, Andre Iguodala locked up LeBron in an outstanding way that series. But Steph Curry, he failed to get him the next 2 times too because of Kevin Durant. So yeah, I guess what I'm saying is Steph Curry, best shooter of all time.
Which is why he's considered good.
And also, I will mention this.
In reference to the text of the question.
The Warriors are one of the greatest teams assembled in NBA history. And emphasis on team, because they really do play great team ball. And Steph Curry is the one that makes it all happen because he's such a threat on the floor that he is almost as important off ball than he is on ball because he gravitates so much attention when he's running around. He doesn't even need the ball. So what I'm saying is, even though Iguodala might have got the MVP that one season, the Finals MVP, Steph Curry was doing things you weren't even watching behind the scenes.
So like basically, like he probably should have been Finals MVP in 2015, and if not for Durant, then it's likely they would have won at least one of the 17 or 18 championships, and he probably wins Finals MVP then. So he's kind of like he almost has 2, even though he has 0.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, he almost has 2, and he's so close to having 2, but yeah, he doesn't have any. He's got it's a goose egg.
But ultimately, great point. This question comes from someone that they're definitely not a basketball fan. It sounds to me like they're kind of a basketball critic. It says, can you address that basketball is ultimately a flawed sport? It works one way for the entire game, and then in the last 2 minutes, it turns into a fouling and free throw shooting game instead. Also, it's too easy to score. So this is a pretty interesting question, I think, because it sounds like the complaint is that the strategy of the game changes at the end, and that is a 100% legit critique.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something that the NBA is not very good in, especially compared to the international game. If you ever watched FIBA, the games flow a lot better, and there are some propositions to change this. If you watched the All-Star game this year, they had something called the Elam ending, which in the fourth quarter, instead of it being timed, they played to a score.
Yep.
And that means that you're no longer incentivized to foul. Because like the foul game is because of the clock.
Right. You just want to stop it.
Right. If you don't foul, then the other team is going to use up the whole shot clock, and then you're cooked by math.
Mm-hmm.
By math.
Yeah. Well,
but if it's all about playing to a score, then it goes normally. So I'd be interested to see if it went well in the All-Star game this year. I'd be interested to see if there's more interest in the Elam ending or other propositions to fix this problem in the future.
It seems like the only issues they look at have to do with like timeouts and like what the refs are able to look at the end, even though, I mean, this question is right. I mean, the strategy does switch up at the last second. It's almost as if you're watching, it's like analogous to someone studying for a test and kind of like doing some medium level intensity. And then once the test is like approaching the last hour, you like ramp up your studying and you start cramming. And it's like that's sort of analogous to like the NBA game, the basketball game. It's like at the end, there's just a bunch of if the score is close, there's a bunch of fouling, a bunch of stoppage.
Yeah, and I agree. It's shitty to watch. The last part of the question is also it's too easy to score. What do you think about that? I mean, that's not actually a question.
I mean, that's just the sport. I don't really know. Like, yeah, I guess it is. Technically, it is too easy if you're comparing it to something like football because the scores get up into like the 140s sometimes. But that's just what the sport. I mean, maybe you could raise the goal to 11 foot.
Nah, I'm not about that. We would miss. There'd be so many fewer dunks if the goal was 11 feet.
But the dunks that did happen would be more exciting.
See, I disagree with the premise, because my question is compared to what? There are sports where I think it's too hard to score. Hockey. Well, hockey's a little different because the playing area is so constrained that there's pretty much always pressure on the goal.
Yeah,
But with soccer, there's very little scoring in soccer.
for sure.
I'm just gonna say it right now. Not a big soccer fan.
Yeah, same. I mean, the way I watch my sports, it seems to like coincide with how easy it is to score in that sport. So like soccer, hockey, not that interested because they're not scoring very often.
So because there are few scores in these sports, that means that they're more subject to randomness. You know, like in a hockey game, like one team could get double the amount of shots on like team X could get like 50 shots on goal and score once, and team Y could get 20 shots on goal and score twice, and team Y wins, even though team X was playing better the entire game.
Of course. And also like
So it's kind of like, do you like that? Do you like randomness and unpredictability? Or do you like teams to be rewarded according to their efforts?
well, and there's so much scoring in basketball, you can kind of like take it easy, you know. You can like look away because you know that it's just like the scoring is
As a
just gonna-
fan?
as a fan, you can look away, you know. You can go get a drink or something. You don't have to pause the game because the scoring is just going to keep happening. If you miss a big goal live in like hockey or soccer, you're going to be kicking yourself because there's only like maybe 2 more of those.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It's not too easy to score.
Like today, we're definitely at kind of a high point in terms of how much scoring there is. Like, there's way more scoring than there has been in recent years. So I get that a little bit, but I feel like this person is kind of saying that like 90 points is too much, and I just disagree.
Yep. Can women play in the NBA?
This is an interesting question, and it was asked in earnest. It's a serious question. There's kind of 2 ways to take it. One is, are they allowed to? And the other way is, could they compete?
So, I am going to interpret as, are they allowed to? And the answer is yes. This is not the Men's National Basketball Association. This is just the NBA. And so yes, if a woman qualifies and is good enough, she can play in the NBA.
I remember watching Around the Horn a few years ago, and they were talking about Brittany Griner, and I guess there was some idea that she might consider playing in the NBA. Like, I think maybe she said something about it.
Psh.
And I think like some of the panelists were saying that maybe she could make an NBA roster, but they were like, the point they were making was basically, why would you do that if you can be a superstar in the WNBA? Why would you trade that for being a bench warmer in the NBA?
Well, right, and if you are a woman, and I'm not a woman, so I'm not gonna speak for them, but if you are a woman and you work your ass off all your life to be a baller, wouldn't you want to go play in the WNBA and like represent them and like show the world? Well, now that I was gonna say show the world that you can be a star in the WNBA, but that point can also be like slotted into like, well, don't you want to go play in the NBA as a woman and show the world that a woman can play a men's sport? But I don't think there needs to be a competition with that. The competition between men and women in sports is unnecessary. So it's like, but that's a good point. Why would you want to do that when you can go be a star in the WNBA?
And like on another level, I just think that they probably can't compete, because
Shots fired.
because at the lower level of the NBA, like the 50th percentile and down is pretty evenly matched. Like the 12th best guy on an NBA roster, there are lots of guys just as good as him in the G League or playing overseas. Like there is a huge depth of talent outside the NBA that the NBA could be easily replenished with. It's not like they are hurting for more guys. Brittany Griner, I think, is 6'10", and I don't know how much she weighs, but I'm sure she doesn't have as much weight on her as a 6'10" NBA player or fringe NBA player.
Yeah, no.
So her size is not going to be adequate to the NBA.
Right.
So I was actually kind of discussing this in more depth with a friend recently, and
Someone who is genuinely curious of the question.
yeah, honestly, I was actually discussing this with the person who asked the question.
Okay.
And he was asking me, so what kind of an NBA, what kind of female basketball player could theoretically, like some idealized female basketball player, what could they do to get in the NBA? And my thought was kind of like they would have to be a highly skilled guard.
Yep.
Because there are women who are 6'4", 6'5", who are ballers, and there are some women who can really, really shoot and handle the ball. The thing I would figure though is if you had like a 6'4", 6'5" woman who could shoot the lights out, I just feel like she would struggle on defense.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and I agree with you. And to that point, someone like Brittany Griner and her position, it seems like that's not what you would want. Like you wouldn't want, like that's not the kind of woman that would succeed in the NBA. It would have to be someone who could shoot lights out, I think. And so like for Brittany Griner to go in there and be like a 4 or a 5 in the NBA, I mean, she would get eaten up.
Yeah. Yeah, she would have to play 3, and she'd have to play the small forward spot and shoot threes.
Yep.
And then is she going to guard LeBron James? I don't think so.
Probably not. Let's move on to this next question here. What kind of contact is allowed?
Kissing is allowed.
Kissing is allowed, I guess, but if it gets too intense, you might get a technical. But they
unsportsmanlike contact.
They also said, I see a lot of contact and no tackling. So what kind of contact is allowed? Well, it's pretty simple, the rules. There is the hand check, which basically is you can't put your hands on the player. You can't be up in the player's grill touching them at all times.
You can touch them, but you can't influence them with your hand. Like you can't push on them. You can't bar them.
Yes, you can't put weight on it, and you can't push.
Gotta get your chest in front.
So I mean, like you can. Yeah, so I guess I'm backing up here. You can touch the player, but yeah, you can't influence them with your weight. Now, there is no tackling allowed in basketball. However, I would say calls get a little... I think the calls start getting a little looser or loosely called closer to the goal.
A lot of contact under the hoop.
Because the ref has to look for not only the defensive foul, but also the rare offensive foul or a charge.
And they got to be conscious of the lower defensive box.
And yeah, the LDB, it's there. They got to know when to look for it. They got to know. So yeah, I mean, what else do you have to add on this one?
I would also add about like the reach rule, which like you can reach around a ball handler to get the ball, but if you touch the ball handler at all when you're reaching around him, then you're gonna get a foul called on you because the ball handler is entitled to, the space in front of him, and I guess that applies off the ball as well. If you reach around your guy so as to like hook them or like give them like a little like side hug or something like that, that's not going to be allowed.
Yep.
But it's a good question because basketball is a physical sport and there is some level of subjectivity to this. I I feel like if someone asked me why was that a foul when I was watching a basketball game, the first thing I would think was like, it just is a foul. Like I've watched so much basketball that I know it when I see it.
It just does.
If you watch basketball, you'll feel out what a foul is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, sometimes with contact, the refs are a little more tolerant with the defender if the guy with the ball is maybe out of control or dribbling like too fast, and the ref deems it as a lack of control, and then maybe runs into a defender.
Yeah, because the offensive player is initiating.
Yes. But yeah, there's no deliberate tackling. This isn't football. This is basketball.
Also, no face mask penalty.
Yep, that's true.
I thought this question was interesting. Why don't folks? Why don't folks play a dedicated goalie like in other sports?
I guess the reason that both teams don't use one of the 5 players to just hang around the rim is because players cannot goaltend. And so goaltend is when a player interferes with the shot when the basketball is going down towards the hoop.
Yeah, you're allowed to influence a shot from when it leaves the shooter's hand to, or actually, I guess before it leaves the shooter's hand. You're allowed to influence the shot until it's reached the apex of its parabola.
Yep.
But once it goes past the apex, like you said, when it's on its ways down, you can't touch it, or they automatically scored the bucket for the offensive team.
Yeah. That's honestly the only reason I can think of why there would not be a goalie.
Well, here's the other reason, at least in the NBA, is because of the defensive, the illegal defense rule. So in the NBA, if you as a defender are in the paint for 3 seconds and you're not within arm's length of an offensive player, then there's defensive 3 seconds called on your team. It's a technical foul, and the other team gets a foul shot. In college and high school, you can't camp out. You can just stand in front of the hoop the whole time, but you're not allowed to goaltend.
Okay, next question. Why are b-ball teams, basketball, able to be carried?
Wait, it says b-ball. How do you know it's not baseball?
Well, let's get through the question here and we'll see. Why are b-ball teams able to be carried more or less by just one superstar? Ain't no baseball teams carried by one superstar. What makes it less dependent on the weak link player? Watson, you want to answer that one?
So I actually saw a pretty fascinating video on this. I think it was Vox a few years ago. It wasn't about this specifically, but this was part of the answer. It was like the video was about why there's why different sports are more or less predictable. So I mentioned earlier about how like there's a certain amount of randomness that's intrinsic to soccer and hockey because the scores are so low.
Yes.
In hockey, it's not uncommon for teams to come back from 3-0 deficits in the playoffs. Like for a team to lose the first 3 games and then win the next 4. Stuff like that happens in hockey because there's randomness inherent in the sport. But in basketball, you have a lot of possessions. So you get lots of chances for the best team to come out on top. And then on top of that, you can funnel your possessions towards your best player. So like classic example, Russell Westbrook, his MVP season, his usage percentage was astronomical. It was an NBA record, although I think it may have been surpassed by James Harden since then. Don't quote me on that. But usage percentage means the percent of your team's possessions that you consume by ending the play with a shot, an assist, or a turnover.
Okay.
Basically, like you were the last person to do something with the ball, so you used that possession. There's only one ball, so you can give the ball to your superstar a lot.
Right.
So that's a big part of the question, I would say. And then also, there are only 5 players on the floor, so your best player is 20% of your players.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, a baseball team, you've got 9 guys in the batting lineup. You got 9 guys in the field, so your best player is only 11% of the guys who touch the floor.
That's a good point. And then also, also with a sport like baseball, a player's usage is only dependent on like their time at bat or like their position. If you're a pitcher, you're going to be touching the ball every play, but literally, or a catcher, but like any other position, it's totally random.
Right, and even if you're the best pitcher in the major leagues, you're throwing 6 innings every 4 games.
Mm-hmm.
So 4 times 9 is 36. You're only pitching 1/6 of your team's innings.
Right.
And all that to say, weak links are important as well. In the NBA, I think it's typically thought that you can basically hide one guy on offense and on defense, but there's still a cost to that.
Yeah.
If there's one person that the defense doesn't have to guard because he can't shoot, that makes it a lot harder for everyone else, because the defense will take the guy who would have been guarding that guy and they'll put that defender in the paint. It just makes it a lot harder to get the best shots in the game, which are layups. So
yeah,
weak links are still definitely important, but usage percentage is the ultimate answer to this question, I think.
Good answer.
Well, that's the last stop on the bus today. We've got more of these questions in the hopper, though, so be on the lookout for part 2 of this podcast coming soon. Until then, you can follow us on Twitter at thunder_bus_pod, and you can find us on all the major podcast apps. Thanks for riding the bus this week, and Thunder up!